Pitch to Pro is the official podcast of USL Arkansas. This will be our platform to tell our story about the club and the special place that we call home, Northwest Arkansas. This is a journey. We want to bring you along for the ride. We'll share what's going on behind the curtain, help educate the community at large about soccer, our league, and give updates on the progress of the club along the way. Together, we'll explore and unpack our journey to professional soccer, the magic that is NWA, our community, and talk all things soccer from on the pitch to behind the scenes, telling the story of our club. Pitch to Pro podcast is proudly sponsored by podcastvideos.com. Podcastvideos.com is Northwest Arkansas's premier podcast recording studio. Equipped with industry-leading equipment, the recording studio and services save you time, money, and hassle. They are dedicated to helping you create, record, and publish high-quality podcasts for your audience. Be sure to check them out today at podcastvideos.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Pitch to Pro podcast. I'm your host, Wes Harris, Managing Director for USL Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas's professional soccer club playing in the United Soccer League. Today, I thought we'd have a little bit of fun, do something a little bit different. Since we're working on our club branding, I thought it would be kind of a fun exercise to take a look at a little bit of history around soccer crests, or badges, or logos, or whatever you want to call them, where they come from, break down some of the most iconic soccer logos in the world from some of the biggest clubs, what goes into a crest, what are some of the things that clubs think about and fans care about, and just have a fun discussion about those and get into it a little bit. So that's what we're going to try to do today for you guys. So first, let's just talk a little bit about the history of soccer crests and surrounding soccer crests. So there's a ton of books out there available. Everybody probably has their favorite, but this is a good place to start. I really like this one, The Beautiful Badge, and you can find it on Amazon. It really does a nice job of kind of telling the history and going into great detail about what goes into these great crests and logos that we've come to know and love. And as you can see, it's pretty nicely illustrated as well. So again, there's a ton out there. I just wanted to share with you guys that these books do exist, and you can find them if you so choose. So Crest started, again, if you kind of go back to where the game started in England back in the 1800s, at least in terms of the modern football or soccer that we know today. And there were, a lot of different clubs. They wore sweaters, typically, was kind of the uniform. So they were kind of some kind of knitwear, and just based on the cost of getting different colors, across the various uniforms or their sweaters, a lot of teams actually had similar colors. And one of the ways that they started to denote, make some differences and denote which team they started to kind of sew in, as you guys can see here over my shoulder here, on the three lions there on the white sweater. They started to stitch in some logos, some symbols. Sometimes it was initials of the players or the club, and that's where some of the early badges and club crests started, is with initials of the club. That's why that started that way. And so you've got one of the oldest clubs in England, Aston Villa there, which it's still one of their main elements today in terms of their new crest is, that kind of lion, standing lion there. And then you have England's Three Lions, famous Three Lions crest, which was worn on their white sweaters during the first ever FIFA-recognized international soccer match in 1872, which was England versus Scotland. And so you guys can kind of see how that kind of comes together there. You start to get the picture in terms of what clubs started to do in those early days. And that's kind of how we started getting these crests. And, some of the other additional, like, why are they called crests? That was something that was interesting to me too, was they kind of, a lot of them tried to denote different regions, which had some history and heraldry to them. And a lot of them come from and have kind of nods or pay some homage to either families or royalty or countries and their coats of arms. And so that's where crest kind of comes from, and not just a logo or a brand. So that's why we call it a crest or a badge in soccer. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of talk about, what are some of the different elements in terms of what makes a good crest. I think, this is a bit subjective, and people could, maybe make an argument for some different facets or some different key tenets. But these are some things that I think of, and, in talking with a lot of folks and doing some of the research here for today's episode, this is kind of some common themes. Okay. And so one of the most important things about the crest, yes, design is important. Some of the symbols are important, colors, but really what people will tell you, and I think can align to and agree with, is it needs to tell a story. You need to be able to connect with the crest as a fan and understand the different pieces and components of it and how it comes together to tell and paint a bigger picture. And so I think that is probably, for me, one of the most important things when we think about what makes a good crest. Secondarily, I think, and these aren't necessarily in any particular order, by the way, but I think it also really needs to connect with the club's mission, vision, values. It needs to be representative of the club itself. And what does the club say that it stands for? And so when people, see that crest, they identify it with the club, and it is an ambassador for the club wherever it is worn or shown throughout the world. And sometimes, that's what's seen in and of itself on its own, on different pieces of merchandise or print or whatever the case may be. It becomes iconic, and that's the thing that the club becomes known for. And so it really needs to be representative of what the club stands for. And so I think that, again, it needs to be able to paint a picture, tell the story, and connect back to those mission, vision, values, and those key tenets of the club. Just as importantly, it needs to represent the area. It needs to be relevant to the area where the club is located. I think that all of the great crests around the world, in different clubs around the world in different leagues, they connect back to the community. And that has to be, I think, that's so important of any good crest or badge, is it has to be representative and connected to some of the pieces that make that community and area special and great. And that needs to be part of the club itself and the ethos and, its mission, vision, values. So I think if you've gotten the mission, vision, values right and connected to the area, then that should hopefully translate over to the badge as well and the crest. And then obviously there's the design elements. Okay. So you have the overall design. What shape is it? Is it the circular badge is now pretty popular, in some different, leagues and clubs and teams. Traditional crest or shield shape, again, kind of that homage to more traditional kind of coats of arms, if you will. That's where that history comes in to play a little bit there. And then what colors? You have certain colors mean certain things. Your warmer colors, your reds, your oranges, your yellows, they're a little bit more adventurous, aggressive, domineering, hopeful a little bit with the yellows and, sunshine and that kind of thing. Or some of your cooler colors like blues are really, into like loyalty and, greens, a lot of times playing into nature and those kinds of themes. Pink is a little more playful, like Miami and Inter Miami and what they've done. I think David Beckham's one of the few that could pull off a pink kit for his club. So, but they do it well. They pull it off nicely. So anyway, those are, and then you get into symbols a little bit too. Different animals have different meaning, whether you go realistic animal or sometimes there's folklore in the area. I can say this, with example, we just talked about Inter Miami. They have the the white storks there that are really popular in southern Florida. So anyway, you guys get the picture. Symbols, colors, design, they all kind of come together and again tell that story and make a holistic, conversation around what does the badge and crest stand for. So for me, those are some of the main elements. Again, I think, people can make arguments for others, but I think that is pretty well encompassing. All right, guys, we've talked a little bit in terms of the history of the crests of the world and why are they called crests, badges, how did they come to be? We also talked about some of the key tenets of what makes a good crest. And so what I think now is a good thing to kind of jump into is what I've done is I've put together a compilation of the top 5 leagues in Europe from Spain, England, Germany, France, and Italy, and what are the most well-known clubs within that league that the badges or the crests would be well-known. And let's kind of take a look at them. Again, I think, there's a ton of different research out there, a lot of different resources. And these are certainly not going to be all-encompassing in terms of a breakdown on what they mean. But it'll give you guys a good idea of what kind of goes into these crests from some of the biggest clubs in the world, right? So let's jump into it. So first up, we've got Real Madrid, probably the most well-known and most supported club in the world, based on at least the metrics that, are current and what I've seen. So they have a couple of different elements here. And the other thing that I didn't mention previously is crests change a lot over time, especially from clubs that have been around for more than 100 plus years. And so, each of the clubs that I'm about to show you has gone through several different iterations over their history. And so it's kind of hard to piece together their meanings. They keep some elements of some in the past, and then they create new ones, and, meanings will morph. So again, take this with a grain of salt, but it's an attempt to try to show you guys what some of these things mean. So Real Madrid, in Spanish, Real means royal. There you go. You've got the crown atop, signifying the royalty. And this was actually that denotation or that proclamation or patronage to be able to use Real Madrid. Before that point, they were they went by MCF in the logo, which is still a part of the logo today, which was Madrid Club de Futbol, or in English, Madrid Football Club. And so that's why you see MCF in the center of the logo. They're still a part of the logo. That was actually one of the first logo iterations and crest iterations of Real Madrid, was just kind of an MCF, kind of put together there. And so again, I talked about that in the early days. That's how a lot of those came together, but it's still represented within the club today. Real Madrid are famous for their all-white kind of home kits. And throughout their history, that's been very, very consistent, with very few years where they've deviated from that. And it symbolizes that purity, that royalty, again, kind of playing into that motif of the club. And the blue band was originally purple, that kind of goes diagonally there across the crest. And the purple represented Castile, which is the region in which Madrid is situated. And it was changed to blue in 1997, which was the color of the original club's crest. So playing a little bit of patronage there back to that old crest. And so that's Real Madrid. We'll jump in here next and let's take a look at Manchester United. As a diehard Liverpool fan, that I'm giving Man U any kind of love right now is hard, but it's okay. We got to be agnostic here. So Manchester United has gone through a lot of different iterations, and its current modern day crest doesn't really look like anything that it had in the beginning. The only thing that it's really kept is that merchant ship that you guys see at the top there of the shield inside the circle there, I guess is what you would call it, of the banners. And the merchant ship still means what it does today. Manchester was a powerhouse kind of port city, and was a massive part of global trade and commerce, especially during the Industrial Revolution. big factory town. And so that's what that denotes, is kind of that signal to the town's history of being this symbol of industry and global trade. You also have this kind of ornate feel about Manchester United, even in their modern day iteration of their logo. And this is a bit of a nod back to the history of the club. Even though it doesn't look necessarily like it, it's still ornate and kind of flourishy, if you will, for lack of a better term, with those banners and how it comes together. And that's because the club's original crest was this very ornate kind of coat of arms. And so it's a little bit of a nod to the history there. The Red Devil is actually something that came into play in the 1970s, and it was during the Matt Busby era in the 60s, where it was kind of a nickname that they became known for. They wanted to instill fear in their opponents, the way they flew around the pitch. And so that was just a nickname that kind of became adopted from, supporters in the club during that era. And they made it official as part of, a centerpiece, really, of the club and their crest in the 1970s. And then the red and yellow, again, kind of plays a little bit of tribute to the original crest, because those were the colors of the coat of arms in the crest where they were first featured. And so those are some of the elements there in terms of Manchester United. Next up, we've got Juventus. So we jump over to Italy and Serie A, and one of the most storied clubs in all of the world. And for sure within Italy, there's a lot to choose from. Again, I chose Juventus because one, they're one of the bigger clubs in the country, but also they have one of the most unique crests in world football. And this is a new one that they've re-released, I guess, within the last decade now. And it's very distinctive. It's one of the few that is kind of this really modern take in terms of the shape. You guys can see there in terms of this, basically a J for Juventus. And so the way that they've done it, though, they have, kind of two different components that make it look like three there. I don't know if I'm describing it right, but basically three channels is kind of how it looks, which is a bit of a nod to the Scudetto shape of the country's flag and the national team, signifying Italy. And, they say that it represents the club's determination to strive for victory. But in the Italian national flag, you have the three colors vertically in those channels on the crest of the national team shirt. And so that's kind of that same motif and feel as you work your way across from left to right on the Juventus crest. You also have, with those two kind of blocks and the way that they've done that, it creates this imagined kind of stripe sensation when you look at it, I guess. And so that is a very iconic kit for Juventus, is those black and white striped kits. And so that's what they've attempted to do there. And then the J obviously kind of stands on its own as one of the most popular, clubs and Juve, and that's what they're going for there. So that's Juventus, a different take, a little bit more, modern and a little bit more, I guess, forward thinking, you could say. It got a lot of different, very kind of divided reviews when it came out. I think it was 2017, but I could be wrong there on the date, but not too long ago for sure. So anyway, different take there from Juve. Jumping over to France and Paris Saint-Germain, for sure the biggest club in France, and has drawn, with the new ownership, some big name players: Messi, Neymar, Mbappe, just to name a few over the last few years here. So Paris Saint-Germain is a club that, I didn't know this until I was doing the research, actually represents not just this town and city of Paris, but also a smaller town that was kind of a royal town. And I'm going to butcher this. I really apologize. I don't speak French, but Saint-Germain-en-Laye, which is a neighboring town that was, a really royal town back in the day and as part of the town's history in France. And so that is why the club is called Paris Saint-Germain. And obviously it's got really prominent there what Paris is known for with the Eiffel Tower, right? Really pops with the red against the blue. And the logo was built around in that circular shape as a stylized depiction of a soccer ball or a football. So that's how it's got its round shape. The red and blue have, historically been the colors to represent France, as well as obviously, like I said, Eiffel Tower, the shape that always is a part of that. And then the fleur-de-lis is a symbol of French royalty and also a bit of a nod again to that town of Saint-Germain there. And that's why it's located towards the bottom where it says Saint-Germain as well. And so that's a little bit more in terms of PSG or Paris Saint-Germain. And then finally we have Bayern Munich or Bayern München. There's actually a much longer name if you want to get technical in the official German name of the club. But Bayern Munich is located in the Bavarian portion of Germany, and there were three main regions for Bavaria, and so that's part of it's kind of a combination of those, at least for sure two of them, in terms of the different regions and coats of arms and crests and things like that in terms of how this came together. So the red color in the badge is actually a nod to the Franconia coat of arms, which was one of the three main regions of Bavaria, where the club is located, like I said. And then the blue and white checkered pattern comes from the coat of arms from the Wisselbach dynasty, which ruled Upper Bavaria from the years 1240 all the way to 1918. And again, they take that kind of modern, a little bit more modern circular look there, which they've done for quite a while. They've been one that's been one of the ones to lead that. And so anyway, that's Bayern Munich. They don't have it's not super complicated, but is, not always the case in terms of what you need to be known and memorable. Sometimes a little bit more simplistic is the route to go there. So anyway, that's Bayern Munich. And so, hopefully what we've been able to do today is give you guys a little bit of history in terms of soccer crests, what makes a good crest, what goes into it, what are some of the pieces that people have to consider. And then, we dove a little bit into some of the better known crests around the world from the largest soccer clubs on the planet and some of the biggest leagues and have the biggest following and fan base. So it's an exciting time to be able to be a part of this and help co-develop a brand and a crest with our community. And, we're definitely taking all of the feedback that we possibly can. We're engaged that, we took from earlier stages of listening sessions as well as online surveys and polls that we've done. We've heard you guys and have been working with our fan panel to make sure that you guys are represented and your voices are heard as we kind of develop this brand and this, what will become our crest. And so hopefully something that you guys can be proud of, but certainly one where we can absolutely say that we have been involved in and making sure that the community is at the forefront of everything that we're doing here as we develop this brand that's going to be representative, of Northwest Arkansas and our broader region. So thank you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode. And now you know a little bit more about soccer crests. So we'll catch you next time. Make sure you tune in for the next episode of Pitch to Pro. And until next time, Northwest Arkansas, we'll see you. Thanks.